this. And what happened with the video is the closer I would get to this black object that I call the obelisk, the more the videotape would distort.
Sure.
As if there was a magnetic field causing the videotape to distort.
That's totally understandable, you know. Obviously, it was generating some kind of magnetic force. Yeah, it would directly affect a video camera or any camera.
Right. And you know, I've only learned all of these possibilities since this encounter happened and since I've gone public with this. Before this, I believed nothing. I didn't even believe in science fiction. I was a scientist based in fact, hard fact. And I always like to tell everyone, because this is the best thing I can tell you, is if this had not happened to me, I wouldn't believe it either.
Well, it is pretty fantastic, you have to admit.
Well, you know, this happened to you, Jonathan, back in 1996. I mean, this is 8 years later, and I can still detect in your voice that it's just like it happened to you last week.
Well, when you have an experience like this, it not only changes your feelings about the subject, but this has changed my entire life, my entire concept of what our life is about, and the fact that the realities that we live in are not necessarily the ones we've always been told are the only ones that exist.
Do you think that you'll ever be able to come back to the United States?
Yes, since this happened, and many of your viewers and audience know that I went on the Art Bell program, and early in '99, and we presented this material to the public, and you know, he has a huge viewing audience. This went worldwide.
Right.
I then shortly later went on television in Mexico and presented this material to the world. And this program, again, through Mexico, has aired around the world 11 times. After this happened, I became a much more public figure, therefore being left alone to some extent. But even to this day, there are still organized groups of people who attack not the evidence from my case, but me, myself, the person. Personal character assassination.
Right, Jonathan, let's
harassment of my family and my friends.
I want to talk about that when we come back from our commercial break, how your life was simply deleted. Everything about you, your school record, social security number. And also, when we come back from the break, let's get into how you got the body back in the car, back home, and we'll show some video footage of the creature wrapped up in the space blanket on your kitchen floor. Our guest is Dr. Jonathan Reed, author of the book called Link, an E.T. Odyssey, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Hi, everybody. We are back, and thanks for waiting through the break. Our guest tonight is Dr. Jonathan Reed. Hi, Jonathan. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thank you.
Okay. You know, we're speeding through this because we only have an hour for television, and the story as it unfolds in your book is really the way to appreciate it, or on your videotape. So the alien to you, or the creature, is for the most part, you've killed this thing.
Yes, at that moment, once I hit it, once I was in this area, I felt it was dead. And I was afraid. I was not only afraid what was happening to my body, but afraid that I had killed something. And my mind was, you know, going 100 miles an hour. So I actually started to think, well, maybe I should hide this body for two reasons. Number one, maybe I had killed it, maybe I was in trouble, and also maybe I could bring somebody back to take a look at this with me, to make some sense out of all that wasn't making sense. So at that point, I grabbed the body and kind of rolled it up in a thermal blanket that I had, which is an emergency blanket that many people take with them when they're hiking in the woods. And I had a pack, and I had some water, and my cameras, and a couple other small items. So I pulled out this thermal blanket, and I thought, okay, I'll use it to cover it up, to hide it, to keep the animals away from it. So this was my initial thought. But after I picked it up and rolled it up, similar to a sleeping bag, so I wouldn't have to touch the body, I realized this thing was so light, so incredibly light, maybe under 50 pounds, that I picked it up and I started looking for a place to hide it, to store it so it would be safe. And I started walking back to where I had parked my Jeep. Now, incredibly, I had walked to this site, taking me almost an hour. Well, all of a sudden, I found myself back where my Jeep was parked. I mean, it felt like within 5 or 10 minutes. This was incredible in itself. But at that moment, I thought, okay, I'll put the body in my Jeep, and I've got to get some help. I've got to drive home, because I was so sick, just unbelievably sick. So I put it in the back of my Jeep. I got in the Jeep, and I sat there for a long time. And I looked over to where my dog always sat next to me, and she wasn't there. So I knew something had happened. And in the rearview mirror, I could see this wrapped up thermal blanket.
Jeez.
And so I started for home. I was about 60 miles from my home. And I stopped at a ranger station. There was no one there. I was trying to get help. I rested for a while. I drank some water, and I continued to drive home. And once I got home, I sat in my carport, and I thought, none of this can be happening. None of this is a reality. It's got to be an illusion. But again, there was this thermal blanket in my car. I couldn't deny what I had found.
So now you get home and you've got this thing in your car. Do you decide, like, what do you do with it? Do you put it in the house right away? What do you do?
Well, first of all, you have to try to stand in my shoes, and it's very difficult. And again, this is where people really need to read the book and understand the story.
Yeah.
But my mind was denying this. It was constantly telling me this couldn't be true. I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think that this is a reality. So my mind said, put this somewhere where you don't have to look at it, where you don't have to think about it. Maybe you can feel better tomorrow. Maybe you can bury this thing, and all of it will become an illusion. This is where my mind was at. So I got out of my Jeep, I went into my garage, and I had a big, large freezer that was like, they call them a coffin freezer. And I thought, okay, there's not much in there. This body will decompose if it's not refrigerated. So I thought, this is a good place. I'll put it in there. I won't have to look at it, and it'll be there when I need to deal with it. So I put it in the freezer. I went in the house, and I tried to calm down. I tried to get well. And a few hours later, I had talked myself into believing that what was in my freezer couldn't have been this creature. It had to be my dog, Susie. Maybe my dog, Susie, got killed somehow. Maybe I couldn't handle it. Maybe my mind was going into shock. So I told myself, that's it. Susie has to be in the freezer. And I had to prove that to myself. I went back out to my garage, opened the freezer, took this wrapped package out, laid it on the table, and opened it up. And at that moment, it wasn't my dog. It was, in fact, the body of this creature.
And there it is in the freezer with your pork chops.
Well, you know, we can laugh about it now.
Have to throw that meat away.
But yeah, at the time, it seemed the most logical thing to do.
Now, I mean, I'm sure people have asked you this before. So you thought you killed this creature. I mean, you didn't run right to the police or the authorities right away. There must have been a reason for you not to do that.
Well, I was afraid. I was scared. I had tried to get help, like I said, on my way home. As soon as I got home, I made phone calls to my friends, my girlfriend, trying to get them to help me because I was so sick, trying to make some sense out of this. And the next day, my friend came over, and I explained to him what had happened. He thought I was crazy. But then I proved to him what I had. And from that step on, we tried to get help. We called many places. We called the police. We called the Air Force. We called different organizations that we felt would be interested. Of course, everyone thought we were crazy.
I can just imagine calling the Air Force and going, hello, sir, we've got a dead E.T. in the freezer.
What we did is we posed